In a small town in Columbus, Ohio, Sarah's electric wheelchair breaks down, leaving her trapped and hopeless. Everyone says it's impossible to fix, until a young mechanic, Jake, steps in. With skill, determination, and heart, he brings her mobility and her life back, proving that even the impossible can become reality. Like, share and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Now let's get started. Sarah stared out the rain-streaked window of her small apartment in Columbus, Ohio, feeling a sense of helplessness that had settled into her life over the past year. Her electric wheelchair, the one thing that allowed her independence after a car accident, had left her paralyzed from the waist down, had broken down irreparably. Doctors had shrugged, repair shops had refused, and even her wealthy friends had offered sympathy, but no real solutions. Each suggestion felt like a dead end, another door closing on the independence she cherished so dearly. The room smelled faintly of damp rain and old coffee, her surroundings reflecting the stagnation she felt. The wheelchair sat in the corner, its wheels stiff and unresponsive, a machine that once symbolized freedom, now reduced to an immobile reminder of limitation. Sarah touched the worn leather armrest, remembering how it had once taken her to the park, to work, and even on short trips to her favorite cafe downtown. The thought of being confined to her apartment for weeks more sent a pang of anxiety through her chest. She tried to maintain hope, but each failed attempt to find a repair service chipped away at it. The wheelchair had become a symbol of frustration as much as mobility. On that rainy afternoon, a knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Standing there was Jake, a young mechanic known in the local community for fixing things others deemed impossible. He was 25, with grease-stained hands and a quiet confidence that seemed oddly calming. He carried no fancy tools, just a worn toolbox that seemed to have traveled more miles than most of the town's cars. He smiled politely at Sarah and asked to see the wheelchair. Skepticism mixed with a sliver of hope ran through her as she watched him kneel beside the broken machine, as if he was already seeing possibilities where others saw failure. Jake worked methodically, examining each component of the wheelchair with precision. He traced the wiring, inspected the battery, and checked the motor, occasionally scribbling notes in a small notebook he carried. Sarah hovered nearby, unable to resist peeking over his shoulder, curious about his process. There was a patience in his movements, a quiet focus that was both reassuring and mesmerizing. He didn't make grand promises, didn't claim miracles. He simply assessed, adjusted, and experimented, treating each obstacle like a puzzle that deserved careful attention. For the first time in months, Sarah felt a spark of hope. Hours passed as the rain continued to patter against the window and roof of the small garage. Jake worked in silence, occasionally muttering technical terms to himself, testing and retesting different parts of the wheelchair. Sarah sat on a nearby chair, sipping cold coffee she had made earlier, watching him with a mix of anxiety and admiration. The garage smelled of oil and metal, a comforting scent that reminded her of how work and determination could create tangible results. Each time Jake adjusted a wire or tightened a screw, she felt a tiny surge of optimism that perhaps this day could change everything. Occasionally, Jake would step back, inspect the wheelchair from different angles, and make small, careful adjustments. He was meticulous, almost surgical in his approach. Sarah noticed that he never seemed frustrated or impatient, even when parts refused to cooperate. Instead, he adapted, improvised, and persisted. There was an artistry to his work, a rhythm that suggested he had done this countless times, not necessarily with wheelchairs, but with machines that others had deemed unfixable. For Sarah, watching him work was like witnessing magic grounded in reality, a blend of skill, experience, and unwavering determination. By mid-afternoon, Jake began connecting the wheelchair's battery, testing the motor with careful incremental adjustments. A faint hum echoed through the garage, a sound that made Sarah's heart leap. She leaned closer, watching as the wheels twitched, then spun slightly, then steadied. A laugh escaped her lips, involuntary and full of relief. "It's moving," she whispered, almost afraid to say it out loud. Jake nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, and continued his work, fine-tuning each connection. That hum wasn't just a machine waking, it was hope being restored. Sarah felt a rush of emotions, gratitude, relief, and a lingering disbelief. She had almost resigned herself to a life confined to her apartment, relying on others for every outing. Now, with each click and hum of the wheelchair, she felt her independence inching closer. Memories of past trips, laughter with friends, and simple joys like rolling to the corner cafe flooded back, and she realized just how much she had missed them. Jake, without saying much, had brought more than mechanical skill to her life. He had brought a renewed sense of possibility, a reminder that determination often outweighs obstacles. The afternoon slipped into evening, and the rain outside began to fade into a gentle drizzle. Jake wiped his hands on a rag, stood and gestured toward the wheelchair. "Try it," he said simply. Sarah hesitated, then sat carefully, gripping the controls. She pressed the button, and the wheelchair responded smoothly, almost as if it had been waiting for this moment. Tears sprang to her eyes, and she laughed again, a sound of pure joy. Jake smiled, satisfied, but refused any payment beyond her heartfelt gratitude. For him, seeing her mobility restored was reward enough. Word of Jake's work spread quickly through the town, carried by neighbors who had witnessed or heard of the miracle in his small garage. People called, emailed, and even stopped by, eager to meet the young mechanic who could fix what others couldn't. Sarah felt a renewed sense of connection to her community, a bond strengthened by the shared amazement of Jake's skill. Yet amidst all the attention, she knew the most important change had happened quietly in the garage that afternoon: her regained freedom. It was no longer just about a wheelchair. It was about reclaiming her life. As night fell, Sarah wheeled herself to the window, looking out at the city lights reflecting off wet streets. She felt a mix of exhaustion and elation. The world seemed a little larger, a little brighter, now that she could navigate it again. Jake packed up his tools and waved as he left, disappearing into the quiet streets of Columbus. Sarah knew she would never forget this day, the day a 25-year-old mechanic turned impossibility into reality. Hope, she realized, was often found in the hands of someone willing to try. The next morning, Sarah woke early with a nervous excitement. Her wheelchair, now humming softly in the corner, gleamed under the pale sunlight filtering through her apartment window. She couldn't stop thinking about yesterday, about how Jake had brought life back into the machine, and in a way, into her own spirit. Every moment of hesitation or doubt she had felt seemed distant now, replaced by anticipation of venturing out again. She practiced maneuvering in her small living room, testing the speed, responsiveness, and turning ability. Each movement was smooth, precise, and almost exhilarating. She realized she hadn't felt this independent in months. Sarah decided to visit the local park, a place she had loved before her accident. The familiar scent of wet grass and the distant laughter of children made her heart swell with nostalgia. With the wheelchair functioning perfectly, she glided down her apartment hallway, out the door, and onto the street. The neighborhood had changed little, yet everything felt different, more alive, more accessible. Passers-by smiled and nodded, unaware of the miracle behind her mobility. The city streets, once daunting obstacles, now felt welcoming. For Sarah, each smooth turn of her wheels was a small victory, a reminder that her world was no longer confined to four walls. As she reached the park, she noticed Jake sitting on a bench near the entrance, reading a worn manual. He looked up as she approached, a casual smile spreading across his face. "Looks like it's working well," he said, gesturing to her wheelchair. Sarah nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I can't believe how smooth it feels," she admitted. They talked for a while, discussing the adjustments he had made, the parts he had improvised, and the challenges he faced in repairing the wheelchair. Sarah found herself captivated by his knowledge, his dedication, and the quiet confidence that had made yesterday's repair seem effortless. Children played nearby, their laughter echoing across the park as dogs chased frisbees and pigeons fluttered in the fountain. Sarah navigated the paths easily, waving at familiar faces and smiling freely. For months, she had only observed such scenes from afar, trapped by her immobility and the limitations of others' help. Now she was part of it again. Jake watched her with quiet pride, noting how carefully she adjusted her speed, how naturally she maneuvered around obstacles. The wheelchair was no longer a machine. It was an extension of her will, a tool that gave her back the simple joys of movement, freedom and connection. After an hour, Sarah stopped near the fountain, letting the wheelchair rest on the smooth stone path. She gazed at the rippling water, feeling a mixture of relief and empowerment. "I can't thank you enough," she said, turning to Jake. "You've given me more than a repair. You've given me my life back." Jake shook his head, modestly smiling. "You had the courage to keep trying. I just helped guide the way." His humility struck her. In a world where people often sought recognition or reward, here was someone whose satisfaction came purely from helping, from solving a problem that seemed impossible. As they walked slowly along the park paths, Jake explained how he had diagnosed the wheelchair's motor issues, the faulty wiring and the makeshift battery adjustments he had improvised. Sarah listened intently, fascinated by the complexity behind what now seemed so simple. She realized that each twist, each turn of the wheel yesterday had been carefully orchestrated. Jake's expertise and persistence had made it possible for her to regain independence, but her renewed confidence and trust had allowed it to truly come alive. Together, they marveled at how effort, skill, and belief could overcome obstacles that seemed insurmountable. By mid-afternoon, other park-goers began noticing Sarah gliding smoothly along the paths. A few approached, curious about the wheelchair, admiring its flawless movement. Sarah shared a brief story of her accident and the young mechanic who had repaired it, careful to respect Jake's privacy. Word traveled quickly through the small community, and soon a handful of people came to meet the young man responsible for the miracle. Jake remained humble, answering questions patiently, demonstrating techniques without boasting. Sarah felt proud not only of her restored mobility, but also of the quiet heroism in Jake's work, a reminder that true skill and heart often go unnoticed until they touch someone's life. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the park in warm shades of orange and pink. Sarah and Jake paused on a small hill overlooking the city skyline in the distance. The wheelchair hummed softly beneath her as she sat, savoring the moment. She realized that mobility was about more than just moving from one place to another. It was about freedom, choice, and the ability to engage fully in life. Jake's work had restored more than a machine. It had restored hope, confidence, and the joy of living without limitations. She felt a deep gratitude, one that could not be expressed with words alone. As the evening cooled, Sarah began to head home, Jake accompanying her briefly to ensure everything functioned correctly. Each turn of the wheelchair on the uneven sidewalks was flawless, a testament to Jake's meticulous adjustments. Sarah's neighbors watched with curiosity and admiration, many commenting on the transformation. The story of the young mechanic and the broken wheelchair had begun to ripple through the town, capturing hearts and inspiring hope. Sarah realized that her journey, though personal, had now become a symbol that determination, skill, and kindness could create miracles in everyday life. Back in her apartment, Sarah parked the wheelchair and sank into her chair, exhausted but elated. Her thoughts drifted to the days ahead, visits to friends, trips to her favorite cafe, walks in the park, all possibilities now restored. She glanced at the glowing city lights outside her window, feeling a renewed connection to the world. The broken wheelchair that had once imprisoned her had become a story of triumph. Jake's role, though quiet and understated, was monumental. He had turned impossibility into reality, reminding her, and perhaps the whole town, that perseverance and heart could overcome even the most daunting challenges. Before parting ways that evening, Sarah hugged Jake tightly, tears in her eyes. "I'll never forget this," she whispered. He smiled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Just keep moving forward," he said. As he left, disappearing into the streets of Columbus, Sarah wheeled herself to the window, watching him go. A sense of peace settled over her, the knowledge that life could be reclaimed, freedom restored, and hope renewed. Jake had given her more than a repaired wheelchair. He had given her the courage to embrace life again, fully and fearlessly. The next morning, Sarah awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. The wheelchair stood ready, gleaming in the sunlight streaming through her window. She felt a confidence she hadn't experienced in months, eager to explore the city streets once more. Today, she planned to visit her favorite cafe downtown, a place she had longed to reach for months. Each movement of the wheelchair was fluid, precise, and effortless. She adjusted the speed, testing the responsiveness, feeling a thrill in her regained mobility. With a deep breath, she pushed forward, ready to reclaim the life that had once felt distant and unreachable. As she navigated the familiar streets of Columbus, Sarah noticed the small changes around her. The fresh coffee aroma from corner shops, the laughter of children playing nearby, and neighbors waving from their porches. The city, once daunting and filled with obstacles, now felt welcoming and accessible. Every smooth turn of her wheels reminded her of the skill and dedication Jake had poured into repairing her wheelchair. She smiled at passers-by, sharing glimpses of her joy and independence. For the first time in months, she felt a true connection to the world outside her apartment, as if each moment was a gift of freedom waiting to be embraced. Arriving at the cafe, Sarah maneuvered through the entrance with ease. The barista greeted her warmly, clearly noticing her excitement and the wheelchair's flawless operation. As she settled into her favorite corner table, memories of past visits flooded back, the smell of coffee, the sound of quiet chatter, and the warmth of the sun streaming through the windows. She realized how much she had missed these simple pleasures. Jake had not only repaired a machine, but had restored her ability to engage with the world, to experience life without constant dependence, and to reclaim the small joys that form the fabric of everyday happiness. While Sarah sipped her coffee, she reflected on Jake's dedication. He had spent hours in his small garage, working meticulously to bring life back into her wheelchair. His focus, patience, and ingenuity had transformed impossibility into reality. She felt immense gratitude for his humility, as he never sought recognition for his work. It wasn't just his skill that had impressed her. It was his heart, his genuine desire to help. In a world often driven by money and fame, Jake had reminded her that true value lies in acts of kindness and the ability to restore hope when it seems lost. After leaving the cafe, Sarah wheeled herself to the park, where the familiar paths seemed more inviting than ever. Children played nearby, and families strolled with their dogs, enjoying the crisp afternoon air. Sarah's wheelchair moved seamlessly over the paths, every turn precise and controlled. Jake joined her shortly after, carrying a small toolkit, checking the wheelchair's adjustments once more. He demonstrated minor maintenance tips and offered encouragement, ensuring her newfound independence remained safe and sustainable. Sarah appreciated not only his technical expertise, but also the care and attention he had for her well-being, fostering a bond built on trust and mutual respect. As the sun began to set, casting long golden shadows across the park, Sarah and Jake paused at a hill overlooking the city skyline. The view reminded her of the long journey she had endured, the months of frustration, the despair of immobility, and the moments of doubt that had once seemed insurmountable. Now, with the city bathed in warm light and the wheelchair responding flawlessly beneath her, she felt triumph and liberation. It was more than a physical restoration. It was a reclaiming of her confidence, autonomy, and sense of self. Jake's dedication had helped transform her life in a way she would never forget. News of Jake's extraordinary repair spread throughout the town. Neighbors, friends, and even local media took notice, curious about the young mechanic who had achieved what no one else could. Sarah found herself speaking to small groups of people, sharing her experience and praising Jake's skill and humility. Yet he remained modest, deflecting attention and focusing on the work itself rather than the recognition. Sarah felt proud not only of her regained independence, but also of the quiet heroism embodied in Jake's efforts, a reminder that true courage and talent often go unnoticed until they touch someone's life in profound ways. That evening, as Sarah returned home, she reflected on the transformation that had taken place over the past week. The wheelchair, once broken and useless, had become a symbol of perseverance, skill, and hope. Jake's dedication had reminded her that determination and patience can overcome even the most challenging obstacles. She realized that independence is more than movement. It is freedom, confidence, and the ability to participate fully in life. Each smooth turn of the wheelchair, each moment spent navigating the city, reinforced the invaluable gift Jake had given her, not just mobility, but the ability to live life on her own terms. In the following days, Sarah explored more of Columbus with ease and joy. She visited friends, returned to favorite shops, and even volunteered at a local community center, eager to give back in her own way. Jake continued his work in his garage, quietly assisting others in need, never seeking recognition for his efforts. Sarah often thought about the unspoken bond between them, a connection forged through persistence, trust, and the shared joy of overcoming challenges. The story of the repaired wheelchair became a quiet legend in their community, a testament to the power of determination, kindness, and skill to change lives in ways that money or status never could. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah parked her wheelchair by the window and watched the city lights twinkle. Memories of the past months, the frustration, helplessness, and uncertainty, felt distant, replaced by gratitude and hope. Jake had given her more than a functioning wheelchair. He had restored her confidence, independence, and belief in human goodness. In a world full of challenges, she realized that miracles are possible when skill, heart, and determination converge. The small act of repairing a wheelchair had become a story of triumph, proving that even the impossible can be overcome with care, perseverance, and dedication. As night settled over Columbus, Sarah wheeled herself to the park one last time, gazing at the empty paths and the glowing city skyline. Jake joined her briefly, sharing a quiet smile and a few words of encouragement. "Keep moving forward," he said simply, and she nodded, feeling the weight of those words. They had shared a journey that transcended a simple repair, shaping both of their lives. Sarah understood now that freedom, hope, and human connection are priceless. The wheelchair, once a symbol of limitation, had become a symbol of triumph, and Jake's dedication had ensured that her story would continue, filled with possibility, independence, and the joy of living fully.